2024 best ball drafts are going to be open before you know it. So we are digging deep on the rookie previews for 2024. And today we're going to talk about the running backs. The big question here, is there a Bijan in this class? Is there a Devon Achane in this class? Or is it just a bunch of filthy Tank Bigsby's? We're going to find out over the course of this video, reviewing data from Sports Info Solutions, trying to get to the bottom here of the advanced analytics to help us decide who are the rookie running backs worth drafting. Let's talk about it here. Let's get the window going. Appreciate everybody being in here, of course, live, or if you're watching after the fact. Let's get it going. Let's talk about it. So the first thing we have to do here, of course, before we get into it, you can see the list of the top prospects according to CBS's mock rankings. I also did bold the guys who were also crossed over with PFF's top running back rankings as well. So that's how we'll try to pare down the guys that have draft capital or expected draft capital going alongside them, because for running backs, draft capital, a very important part of the equation. The EPA numbers will sometimes tell us guys that can earn a role over the course of the preseason, over the course of a regular season as well. Guys like Roschon Johnson, guys like Kendre Miller, a guy who also did not get the role throughout the course of a year, but largely because of injuries, was in the hunt to get the role down the home stretch. Did have a good game as well at the back half of the year. Those are the things that we could see the advanced analytics that draft capital can't tell us, but let's see what we can do. Shouts to chat as well. We got Justin here. We got Chunk here. So I think Justin in particular, guy that definitely knows his college football. So if there's anybody in the list that you feel like Justin I should be adding, of course, anybody else in chat, feel free to let me know, because I'm sure there are some names that are missing, because that's just how this process goes. But let's look back at what we got last year to try to get a read on what we got right, what we got wrong. Some guys I did like last year. Jahmyr Gibbs, thought that he had a chance to be a Christian McCaffrey type back in particular because of what he did in the pass game. 0.31 EPA there. Good amount of routes. 41% avoided tackle rate in the pass game. Jahmyr Gibbs, we also saw, did not get a lot of rushes against 8-man boxes last year for Alabama. That was something last year that I think I did prioritize the competition, how guys did versus 8-man boxes, maybe a little bit too much, where I liked guys like Dwayne McBride, like guys like Roschon. Of course, you can see Roschon here, a 0.56 EPA against an 8-man box. I think that's one thing that mattered a little bit less for some of these guys, being in terms of the pro stuff, the stuff that I would say that I should have highlighted more so. And I think I did highlight, but I think maybe could have highlighted more so. Just the ability to earn touches, kind of like earning targets for the wide receivers that we talked about there, where a guy like Rashee Rice, high target per route run guy, that ended up being a thing that ports over to the NFL to some amount. He's not earning the same target per route run. He's at a mid 30% target guy in the NFL right now, but because he's able to earn targets at the lower level, he's able to then get production on the higher level as well. For running backs, it's kind of the same thing, where there are some times where these guys, you can see Chase Brown on the screen. Chase Brown in college got fed, or his last year at college, got fed 30 times a game in terms of both the targets as well as the rush attempts. So for Chase Brown, he comes to the NFL and it's like he's a different back. Kind of the same thing for Achane, where Achane did not look that good in these numbers last year because he just got too many touches. He's not meant to be a 24 touch back. Most likely, maybe in Miami he can be because of the fact that the offense is so good. But because the year before, Achane had less volume, was a little more effective, more efficient per touch. That was something where Achane did not stand out to me as much as I would have liked. I drafted him when I drafted him because he ended up a Miami Dolphin. I did not take a lot of Achane in the big board because these numbers didn't stand out. So that is one of those things to consider, where for the big board in particular on Underdog, which we're going to be drafting teams and players before we are actually seeing where they land. That's something where running backs, I think, are the most fluid, where you kind of just want to take guys that are going to have a shot at getting draft capital. In particular, for an Achane, we knew that he was a burner. So are there guys that can have an outlier day at the combine that then results in them getting a pick and being treated like high draft capital guy, even though they didn't play that well in college the year before? So I think that's one thing where in Achane, I want to learn from that a little bit more, where these guys have elite athletics and then, maybe there's some risk and just they got too much volume, they got too much work, and as a result, the efficiency dropped. I don't want to penalize those guys too much. So that said, the one thing I did get right was Tank Bigsby. I hated Tank Bigsby last year. I think if you're a negative EPA rusher, which you can see here, negative 0.02 EPA per rush, negative 0.37 EPA per receiver, I just don't think you're going to have the best shot being more productive in the NFL. So that's something for me where I think with Tank Bigsby, I got talked off my priors there in terms of what I saw in the data, because he went to the Jags with pretty good draft capital, because there were some questions, especially some usage patterns for ATN in the previous year's playoffs that I thought were not great for him, that didn't show a complete full amount of trust that you want to see from a guy to be a bell cow back. I ended up talking myself into Bigsby a little bit more, and I guess I would do the same thing again. But I think that could be a flaw in the process, where if you want to rule a guy out, if you don't think he's actually adding a ton of value, unless he lands in a perfect spot, maybe you don't want to go there. But even then, it is a tough question, because For Achane, I think the spot dictated the opportunity I saw in him, whereas for Bigsby, the spot dictated the opportunity I saw in him, and that was wrong. And should have just trusted the data on that. But I guess that's how it could go. I'm getting constant spam for fake package delivery things, which drives me nuts. My watch just went off, and I'm like, I don't need more spam about some company trying to steal my info for a fake package delivery. All right, so what else to note here about these guys? What do we get right? So Roschon was a guy that looked really good in the EPA numbers. I think this is something that I would hold pretty close to heart, where guys that look good in EPA, and even if they didn't get the workload, Roschon, of course, being the backup to Bijan last year, I think that these guys who perform well in terms of EPA metrics are likely to show up enough in practice that they can climb a depth chart. The issue, though, is like for a guy like Roschon, if that run out isn't perfect for them, like, does he then take the workload away from Foreman? He kind of does, but then he gets hurt when he has the best chance to actually fully earn that role when Khalil Herbert was out. Then Foreman went on his run where he was like rolling downhill like tremendously well. And I think that cost Roschon the opportunity to get the role. But I do think that plus EPA players get better shots to earn a role. Same thing with Zach Charbonnet, plus 0.24 EPA per rush for him. He earns a role in the Seahawks lineup, even though Kenneth Walker is about as good as he's ever been, and probably as good as he'll ever be, I would think, in terms of both being shifty, having some more runs, kind of had some negative runs over the course of the season, but to start the year looked good. And Charbonnet is so good in practice that he kept earning the role. Tyjae Spears, same thing, kept earning the role, whereas guys like Deuce Vaughn never really fully earned the role. Nakia Watson is guys in this draft class. We'll see. Evan Hull, I think he could have earned the role, but was still not good enough to expect it. But Keaton Mitchell earned the role. Kendry Miller, I think, would have earned the role, but got hurt. Kenny McIntosh didn't earn a role, but was a guy that got kind of lauded by Pete Carroll. So I do think there is some merit in the EPA numbers. The one outlier last year would be Dwayne McBride, who just got cut, in the preseason, put on the practice squad, never made the roster after that. I think he was a guy where that was a pretty big leap from the small school to the big school, and being a pure bruiser in a small school, I think is something you kind of have to downgrade because physicality is at such a minimum. If you are a guy at Dwayne McBride, I think he played at UAB. So that's something where it's like Mo Ibrahim would be a similar thing. Mo Ibrahim was actually playing at Minnesota, so played at a bigger college and a bigger conference. But it's like, if you're just a bruiser back in college and you're not, I don't know, and you're not doing it like Bama, I just don't know that you're a guy to trust. But I could be me being a little bit shell-shocked from some of the guys that did fail last year. Shout out to guy Bindles here. Shout out to Chris joining here. 2023 was a very top-heavy draft. A few studs and a bunch of duds. I think there were a couple guys, again, I really would say, and I don't want this to just be me defending guys that I kind of advocated for, but I think Kendry Miller would have earned a role if there were just a different rollout for that year where he was hurt when Kamara was first suspended. Then Jamal Williams goes out, but then Kamara comes back in. So Kendry never got the full opportunity. Roschon as well, kind of a similar thing where when he was going to get the really big run when Herbert went out, then he got hurt. So then he was out for a couple weeks, then he lost that role to Foreman. So I think some of those guys got bad situations. Bijan got it landed, but I think the talent for him was so high. Gibbs obviously got the best run out, you would say, for being on the good team. And even then, he had to compete with David Montgomery for the front half of the year. So I think those guys all got kind of screwed. Tyjae Spears played about as well as he could, got, I think, as much of a role as you would have ever hoped for with Derrick Henry being there. And now he's kind of in position potentially to be their lead back next year. So I think he got a pretty good run out. Keaton Mitchell had one of the best run outs too. He just got hurt. So I think it really does come down to, like, these guys can be really talented. And, if they're going with high draft capital, like Gibbs and Bijan, you expect them to get some sort of role, but they also do have to, like, fight their way uphill to get there. And I think that's the other part of it. Running an all-day meeting. Oh, boy, that sounds like a blast. But pop into the Squirt Squad. Appreciate Tyler here, of course, one of the leaders of our little community and a guy who I appreciate very much as a human being as well. So shout out to Tyler. Appreciate all you guys as well who are on the Squirt Squad. A lot of memberships coming up. I know a lot of the free memberships I got given away here on the channel are coming up. So please do renew. And if you're not a member here and you also want access to this data, please do hit that join button down below. $4.99 a month. You'll get all the data here that I use on screen. I do drop in the community posts after the fact for our paying members. All right, let's get into it here. So I did actually do a little bit of research. I will say one thing that I did for a few guys, not all of them, that I don't usually like to do before looking at the data, is I did look at some of their film. So that was one thing that does spoil me a little bit on some of these guys, in particular, Audric Estime, who is one of the top 5 backs scored to PFF, 20 years old. You can see him clocking in here at 5'11", 227, according to CBS. We'll see what the combine weights are. Of course, going to be a little bit more generous to some guys, a little bit less generous to others. I did get oh wow, Tyler gifting away. So Tyler heard my cry, and now 5 Splash Play memberships going out. Shout out to Tyler. Please, if you are getting a free membership, send your thank yous to Tyler. And if you are a person with luscious breasts, also send him a photo of them so you can feel. Even if you're a man, honestly, I think maybe even more so. It's probably safer for everybody involved if you are a man, sending Tyler your titties. So yes, so in general, one thing I will warn against here is I did have a little bit of an eye test thing, but the numbers are still going to be the numbers, so that's going to be the main thing we look at. First guy to talk about who's the highest rank according to CBS was not in the top 5 for PFF. Braelon Allen, though, coming out 6. So, like, they have him at 6'2", 245. I've seen him build a 6'4". A very big guy. He's also 20 years old, if I'm remembering correctly. Actually, he might be – one of these guys is 19. Actually, no, Braelon Allen might be 19. I think he's the one that is actually 19. Film Bro Spags. I just like watching things. I like to see these guys and get a little bit of a taste. I'm not really looking at I'm not looking at all 22 film. I'm looking at the highlight stuff. And then when I really like a guy, like, for Jaden Daniels, I'm starting to do it a little bit. For Anthony Richardson, I did it. I'll watch the full games cut into like play-by-plays. So that's what I do. Braelon Allen's a freak. So here we go. He's a large man, 245, 6'2". Okay, so I might have been mixing up a number there. 19 years old, though. So he graduated early to get into college. The youth is a big part of it. The numbers, though, not crazy impressive. He is a plus EPA rusher, not a good target earner, not very shifty in the pass game. He was one guy I watched a little bit of, did not find him very shifty with the eye test either. So Braelon Allen, those were a couple things that I think stood out right away. The fact that he is this large as well, 6'2", 245, not very good versus 8-man boxes. Don't really want to write him off for that because, again, we did feel like I overvalued 8-man box stuff and how that would translate to the NFL. Don't think that mattered very much for some of those guys last year. For Braelon Allen, though, to not be good at it, I do think is a little bit of a sign that it's not the toughness we want to see. A 24% stuffed run rate on those 8-man boxes is not a thing we want to see from a big guy. I want my big guys to play like a big guy. So we'll say for Braelon Allen, that is a bit of a ding. We got historical anomalies here. Badger fan has seen all of Allen's snaps. If you asked me after his freshman year, would have said he's better than JT, but it's kind of tailed off. So we can look at Braelon Allen's numbers from last year as well. Last year, positive EPA rusher by a little bit, still bad in the pass game, a little bit better versus 8-man boxes, but not much better. So Braelon Allen last year as well, not seeing anything that really stands out. 24% avoided tackle rate last year, 18% this year. Don't want to see that going the wrong way either. For Braelon Allen, I think that the main things that I would say for him are that the youth is a big part of it. Getting a guy who's younger, like he still might have a breakout year in front of him that you could hit in the NFL. So I think that's a thing that I get why CBS would have him ranked highly because of the fact that he is 19. That size too. He's the biggest guy in the class. I think we have a pretty good margin. Looks like he's got about at least 1 inch on everybody. We'll see what the combine measurements are. Of course, we're for an official thing. But I think for Braelon Allen, nothing here stands out as that great. That said, he lands in the right situation. The fact that he earned those touches at such a young age, the fact that he was able to get some things done, he still got some pass game work, even though it's really not enough. I kind of feel like he's inherently going to be a 2-down back more than a 3-down back, unless he really adds a lot of different skills that are not showing so far. But I think for Braelon Allen, like the draft capital might be there because he's young, because he's big. If he tests well, he's probably going to get picked pretty decently. But I don't think he's an outlier player. So the situation has to really line up for him where it has to be a team you trust that that the run game is going to get going, and also a team where you think he could win that spot and really win it too, like not get caught in that Roschon situation. He's got to win it because he's got to be a guy that can get to like that Kyron level to really pay off, or, a fractional amount of Kyron would be also fine. But I think for him, that would be the concern. Graduated high school early, lifts more than O-line and D-lineman, recruited. It's crazy that he would be that strong then, but he's not showing it here. And I think that's always something that, we have workout wonders. The workout stuff is going to drive a lot of happens in the NFL. And sometimes it can be these guys like putting it all together and he learns then how to use his physicality more and how to get the results a little bit more. But he shouldn't be this good against 8-man boxes. He shouldn't be getting stuffed as often as he has. I mean, only a 12% stuff run rate overall, which is not bad. But guys like Blake Corum, Blake Corum is minuscule. He's a very small guy, and he's got a better stuffed run rate than Braelon Allen, though Blake Corum is 23, so you kind of could expect that from a vet. But for Braelon Allen, again, I get why he would go the highest. He's the youngest. He's a big dude, but just not the most impressed. Underdog have any payouts today? I don't know. Why do people ask me this stuff? I'm not the Underdog spokesperson. I don't know. It's probably going to come the next day or so, to be my guess. I don't know why it's taken so long, but it's been like Wednesdays or Thursdays the last few weeks. Or last few, rather, payouts they've done. Some interesting names for smaller schools: Isaiah Davis, Rasheen Ali, Jawar Jordan. Let's see if I could put him in here. I'm not sure. They have to have the data in SIS and have to qualify as a top 200 back in terms of volume, I believe, is their metric to make the list. So some of these guys. Now with the spreadsheet social, let's put them on tape, get our hands in the dirt. Look, I think both are an important part of the process. I would trust the data more than my personal eye test or your eye test or anybody's eye test, really. But combining it all together should be the process. You want to have that. And especially when we're talking about big board drafts, where I think we did provide. I mean, I've heard from enough people that you guys felt like we provided a meaningful advantage to the content I was doing here, along with whatever other prep you guys were doing for yourselves. I would say that, like, you want the overall picture as best you can, because the overall picture is going to tell you where the draft capital goes a little bit more. So a guy like Achane, he didn't look great in these numbers, but we knew that he was going to be an athletic freak and that, you know, he was going to test well enough at the combine to get there. We then see the combine data. We know that he's a burner. He lands in the right spot. That adds to the draft capital that he goes to in terms of that. So that's sort of what you want the information flow to be, is like you have your priors. We then kind of come in, we see what the situation is for him, how they test the combine, how it's going to affect draft capital. I think that's sort of what the process is. It's going to work best for you guys. But yes, I know that Dan's just doing a bit, but I think, you know, you do want to do both if you can. Bucky Irving, let's move it on here. So Oregon had some big outlier days. A guy PFF grades I think we're also very favorable to as well. 34% avoided tackle rate, 3.8 yards after contact. Irving, I believe, is also 21, I believe. Yeah, 21 years old, Bucky Irving. I should have put these all in the spreadsheet, but I did not. Bucky Irving, though, so high avoided tackle rate, high EPA per carry. This was an Oregon offense that I wouldn't say video gaming in the Tennessee way, but did run like a really well-oiled machine in a way that you can't expect every offense to run. We talked about Bo Nix before, guy who kept that offense running like clockwork. So for Bucky Irving, you know, some of this could be a little bit of the offense itself, but the size will be a key thing here. He is listed at 195. You want to see him be over 200 pounds to feel safety, though. That said, Jahmyr Gibbs this year was under 200, and he is a guy that I think anybody would have been happy to have, and was drafted like a guy anybody would have been happy to have. So I think maybe you have to change the priors a little bit with the 200 pounds or more thing. That said, for Bucky Irving, high avoided tackle rate in the pass game as well. Earned targets at a pretty good rate. A 27% target per out run rate. Was not a plus EPA receiver, though, which we would like to see. I would like to have him adding direct value there. Again, 8-man box is not everything, but a 27% avoided tackle rate against 8-man box is pretty impressive. Only 11% stuffed run rate as well. So for a guy, basically a bell cow back at 18 opportunities per game, 17 actual touches, 13 rush attempts. He's getting the ball everywhere. He's productive at pretty much everything, though could be more productive in the pass game. Got red zone touches as well, 2.7 red zone rushes per game. So that looks pretty good for him. Red zone targets, so basically 3 red zone opportunities per game overall. That's a workload that works. Bucky Irving, very much a created video game character in Madden kind of name, but I think Bucky Irving, one of those guys who will stand out for sure. I actually did not watch video of him yet. So for Bucky Irving, that is one thing I can't confirm with my priors. We'll see what the size is. Again, would want to see him be on a little bit on the bigger side, or if not, giving us something speed-wise is really going to stand out where he needs to be putting up, you know, Achane kind of speed. Obviously not directly Achane speed. Achane was a track runner. I don't know what Bucky Irving is. I presume he's not a high-level track runner like Achane was. But for Bucky, I think, yeah, Bucky's electric is what Dan's saying here. When you see this high avoided tackle rate, that's a thing that certainly does carry over level to level. And I think earning touches at that level as well, earning targets, I think these are all positive things. And a team that, you know, people want to downgrade the Pac-12's defenses that what they face and all of that, still played as legit a competition as you can in terms of being in a softer big conference. So I think for Bucky Irving, he probably stands out the most. Obviously, the two guys we've seen so far, even though Braelon Allen, you get the logic why he could go above him. Will Shipley, the great wide hope here at running back, 17.3 opportunities per game. Unfortunately, not looking that great. Negative 0.06 EPA. Did earn touches at a pretty good rate, but the actual conversion of them to value is not there. 15.6 routes per game, 3.3 targets, caught 2.6 of them. Good for a 0.173 EPA, so he added value in the pass game. Not a lot here that I would expect it to be too much of an outlier. Shipley, too, I believe, is 21 years old. I have to keep looking all these guys up because the age is an important part for all the draft stuff. Yeah, 21 years old for Shipley. Against an 8-man box, really bad. Could not get anything going at all. So not a power runner. 31% stuff run rate versus an 8-man box. Negative 0.46 EPA. Again, we don't want to read too much into that. You know, Gibbs didn't even get enough touches to qualify against 8-man boxes last year. But still, like, we're not seeing a lot of value added in the run game, seeing a little bit more added in the pass game, but not enough to stand out. 3 red zone rushes per game, 0.5 red zone targets per game. Only converted them into touchdowns at a pretty bad rate, especially the rushing TDs. 8% touchdown rate. Negative 0.32 EPA in the red zone. He's just not a good rusher. I don't see anything from Will Shipley here that would make me think he's a number 3 overall prospect, besides the fact that he's the skin color of Christian McCaffrey and maybe got a workload that reminds you of that. I don't see anything for Shipley here that stands out. I believe I presume he's related to Jordan Shipley, so he's got the pro DNA in his family. But for Will Shipley, I don't get why he'd be at number 3. PFF didn't have him ranked amongst their top 5. So CBS, we've talked about it in the past. CBS's mock drafts / prospect rankings, a good read on guys who are going to be in the hunt, but not really good at the ranking part of it. Shipley, I think, feels like he should be like a 6th rounder at best, unless there's some combine stats that are going to blow everybody away. Jonathon Brooks, another guy who is 20 years old. So looks like Jamal Charles, but a little bit bigger, a little bit slower. If you just watch the Texas highlights, he was one guy, again, that I watched a little bit of video of. 21.5 opportunities per game for him. Of course, he touches, plus he targets for him. 21.1 rushes per game at a 27% avoided tackle rate. So good numbers. 0.06 EPA. I think that's these are all okay numbers. I think that nothing here is like jumping out besides the avoided tackle rate. 27% would be very good. For comparison's sake, last year Bijan led the class at 33%, tied with Roschon Johnson for the highest avoided tackle rate. For Brooks, really good in the pass game, really good. And you could see it again with the video that I watched. Only watched 2 different compilations, but still was like, wow, he's got some juice in the pass game for sure. 11 yards per catch, 13.2 yards after the catch. So he's getting in the backfield, making stuff hit. A 48% avoided tackle rates. That actually would be, I believe, around where Jahmyr Gibbs was last year. Higher than Gibbs, 41% avoided tackle rate in the pass game as well. For Jonathon Brooks, everything looks good here. 0.5 EPA per target. So basically adding about a half point of value every time that he is touching the ball. That seems good. Not good against an 8-man box, stuffed at a class high rate, 36% stuff run rate for him. Got 5 attempts to get an 8-man box, so it does tell you that teams were trying to sell out, stop him to some amount, and he did not do great against that. Negative 0.4 EPA for a rush attempt here. I'm seeing Christopher's chat, which I will pull up in a moment, but did make me laugh. Jonathon Brooks, to me, I think the eye test looks a little bit better than some of the numbers here. Really liked what I saw. I like the earning volume overall. He's probably out of the guys who are actually going to be a top draft capital guy. Jonathon Brooks is probably the one who earned the most touches. So I think that does speak a little bit to his value. Being 20 years old, also a positive thing. For Jonathon Brooks, though, I wish the numbers were a little bit better. I think you could have made me fall in love with him potentially here. And I think that I'm not feeling that way fully, even though I see value in the pass game. I see value in terms of getting to opportunity in the run game as well. If he tests really well at the combine, I would watch out for him. But I think for Jonathon Brooks, could be a little bit better here for sure. The stuff run rate's not good everywhere, which is not what you want to see necessarily. Christopher's chat before, where are the rookie nudes? I mean, Jonathon Brooks, shirtless. I don't think he's one of those guys that we want to look him up shirtless. Brooks, shirtless. We can do it. This is Makad Brooks from True Blood. Now we're just getting different shirtless guys who are not the guy we wanted to see. So that's why the system doesn't work that way. We're talking about some white running backs here. Actually tried to recruit Laube out of high school, still coaching in college. Oh, interesting. All right, there we go. Laube going to Senior Bowl. Just some college guys talking college. If you guys want to do, hop in the chat and talk some college with some old college hands out there, historical anomalies and Justin. But Brooks, look, I think Brooks should be above Shipley easily. I think Bucky Irving, I would still say, is my number 1 based on what we've seen so far. But we have not talked about the man coming up next. Audric Estime. Watch the highlights. Actually, he's what got me watching the highlights because I was like, I need to make sure I pronounce this guy's name right because I was like, it's not I didn't know what it was. I thought it was Estime, but don't want to be wrong. That said, Estime's highlights are almost enough where I don't want to show highlights here on the channel because I don't want to get demonetized, get copyright struck. We already have a few, one lingering copyright strike from the day we tried to watch WWE matches with former NFL players. So I don't want to get the channel in trouble and hurt myself in that way. That said, if you're somebody who likes the players I like, who likes football the way that I like football, pull up some Audric Estime highlights. Audric Estime. Brooks towards ACL. Did not know that. Okay, so that explains why he'd be lower than Shipley, even though I still think even with the torn ACL, he should be lower than Shipley. Estime, though, the way he runs like a created video game character in the best possible way. Just he is a bowling ball. There are guys flying off of him. It's like Tecmo Bowl. Like it's really, he is a very fun running back in a way that I enjoy. And the data does not do anything to hurt that. 23% avoided tackle rate, 0.195 EPA per rush. So second best pure efficiency runner here in the class behind Bucky Irving. Did not get a lot of work in the pass game, was pretty good with it though. 24% avoided tackle rate, 22% targets per out run, 0.22 EPA per target there as well. So added value. Didn't get enough work though to feel confident in it. Estime is a guy kind of like a Roschon last year to me, kind of like a Charbonnet. Think he earns his way up the depth chart overall, just in terms of his ability to get there. He's also another one that's 20 years old, so he's not too old, especially given that he looked like he's built like Leonard Fournette. If Leonard Fournette like really cared about fitness, if he really didn't go the wrong way to the point that he's not even on a playoff roster anymore. I would say that for Audric Estime, a lot of things to like about the physicality. Really need to see how he grades out at the combine because he could run. He could run slowly because he runs. I mean, he's just so big and burly. But if he runs like a good time, I think that Estime should surge up, and he could run a good time as well because he's fast. Like he's a fast runner in terms of the film, but you know, like in terms of how that relates to track speed, I don't know. But great against 8-man box as well. Got 6.5 rushes. So they were really selling out to stop in an 8-man box, and he still generated 3.4 yards after contact per rush attempt. So Estime, my kind of guy, the Chris Ivory violent runner we talk about sometimes on the show. That's Estime. 0.24 EPA on those 8-man box runs as well, which are not everything, but the fact he's adding value. Positive EPA in every facet of the game is a very good thing to see. Also got 3.4 red zone rushes in the per game as well. One of the top marks in the class, mostly behind guys that are not really, too old of a prospect. Is definitely Cody Schrader, Corum getting pretty close to that. So Estime to me, being young, being this good, being good at everything that leads to touchdowns and production, and also, again, being a player that should win a role or at least, get a chance to climb that depth chart throughout the course of a camp. I think Estime is fantastic. Estime, I don't think the draft capital will be there as much as Bucky Irving, but I think that Estime should be the top back in the class. If we're going to, especially because he's 20. I think that's really big for Estime. I love him. I think Estime is my favorite back of the last two classes that we've done this process here. Bijan, I guess, it's hard to downgrade Bijan. Like Bijan, we're to look at his numbers real fast just to kind of give me a reality check. But EPA per rush, Estime is better. A little bit more muscle for Estime as well, even though he is technically a bit shorter. But honestly, him being an inch shorter, I don't think is a bad thing if he's got more weight. He's got a 0.195 EPA per rush compared to Bijan at a 0.122. Targets, not quite as good, not as good in the pass game. 0.224 compared to a 0.396. But, again, that's whatever. Like, Estime is still good enough. Last year, Estime also not quite as good in a lot of these numbers. But I'm not going to really worry about that too much. I don't think Estime is a one-year wonder, especially, last year he was 19. This year he's 20. Got to give him some grace for that. 94 PFF grade leads all the running backs. Good to know. What's the projected draft capital? I don't know. CBS had him, again, ranked as number 6 running back, so I would guess to them it's probably a 3rd or 4th rounder. I think he should go. He should definitely go into 3rd, I would say. But he really is something that I need to behold. They had multiple backs at D2. His legs should be fresh. So, yeah, look, Estime is the guy. To me, if he's going for free in the big board, I'd load up on his ass. Like I would. Is that a pause? Load up on his ass? But I would load up on Estime. I think out of all these guys, Estime to me, like he just, everything looks beautiful. Just looks beautiful. So that's the flag plant, first flag plant here. I think Bucky Irving, like him enough. Like you can talk me into that. But I'm planting that flag for Estime. Just the way he runs, man, is something to behold. Michael Wiley, another old back as well. Wiley had more work last year, I believe. Was pretty good last year. Not great, though. 0.10, or I guess 0.11 EPA per rush. 29% avoided tackle rate. Good against 8-man boxes, but nothing really crazy here for Michael Wiley that'd make him leap upwardly. Michael Wiley this year, though, got less work because I think they had more backs in the stable in Arizona. Michael Wiley is a senior who is, I think, 23. yeah, old veteran Wiley. So like these kind of guys, if they land the right spot in the NFL, they can make a roster, but we don't really want to start banking on guys that are 23, 24-year-old seniors unless they're really great outliers. I don't think Wiley is that. That said, pretty good in the pass game, 0.48 EPA per target there, 11 routes per game, 3.5 targets per game. But him getting less work, him being older, him having some miles on him from being an older college football player, I think not the best combo for him. Comment God likes Trey Benson and Blake Corum to be two of the best in the league. Wow. Okay. I mean, I don't know if Houston's going to be moving off of Singletary that fast. I think they're very happy with what they got from Singletary last year. But I get having some esteem for these guys. Blake Corum, though, no chance that Blake Corum is going to go highly. He would have to go in like the fourth round. Jabari Small, look at quickly, though. Blake Corum was a guy I really liked last year. Thought he should have come out last year because I think he would have been the best backs in the class. Now he's a year older, and I think put up slightly less good numbers. But Jabari Small, coming out of Tennessee, did not get enough pass game work to qualify amongst the top 200 pass catchers. They have to be in the top 200, yeah. So that's to answer Justin's question in parallel. But he did not get enough targets as a running back, as a pass catcher to qualify that in the top 200, which again kind of speaks for itself. If you're not top 200 in terms of getting overall volume as a runner or as a pass catcher, I think that's not a great sign unless you're just behind an all-time great running back. But even then, Bijan was was ahead of Roschon last year. Roschon still enough to qualify in both. So I think that, again, if you don't have the numbers in here, it's not a great sign. Jabari Small, though, again, no numbers in the pass game, so just did not get that work. He's not good enough against 8-man rushes or overall for me to feel like he's a player that I really want to plant any flag for. If he lands somewhere good, if he tests well in the combine, that's it. But they didn't give him any red zone work either. 2.1 red zone rushes. I'm not impressed by anything with Jabari Small. I also, frankly, don't want my running back to be named Small. I don't need it. Unless it's a bit on one of those YouTube creators out there that are doing Madden franchises. I don't want Jabari Small. I don't think he looks good. I think he should be in that Will Shipley tier of guys that numerically show nothing to me. Ray Davis may be interesting to look at. 24, though. Put up good numbers. May have enough to qualify. Yeah, Ray Davis is in here, right here behind Corum. Corum coming up next. So he's a stocky guy. He's on the thumbnail because I think he's the most well-known back out of all these guys. Obviously looked a little bit worse than Edwards or whatever the other running back is. Michigan in the championship game, but still got his touchdown. So Corum did get the work there. The other guy looked a lot more explosive, I would say, per play. That's, yeah. Again, Tank Bigsby. Need names like Tank Bigsby? No, because that's what fucking duped us, everybody. Like, that was the thing I yelled about on stream last year was I felt like Tank Bigsby's ADP, especially in the big board, was entirely because people going, Tank, how could I not draft a running back named Tank? And then after that, he went to the Jags, and I got roped in enough. But running back names are one of those where you have a cool name, and people are like, this guy's somebody. Wendell Smallwood disagrees. I mean, Smallwood, but that's, because he has to compensate for the the small wood that he has by being a good football player. But Blake Corum got the volume. Again, volume's a little bit down this year. Was okay in the pass game. Didn't get a lot of pass game work. Only 7 routes per game. Only 1.2 targets per game. 7.3 rushes against an 8-man box. So did see the most rushes against an 8-man box. Was okay with it. So for a small guy, he's not Deuce Vaughn. He is Deuce Vaughn approximate size, a little bit stockier, but getting close to that Deuce Vaughn range. But he's better than Deuce Vaughn. So I would say Blake Corum, at least right away. I think better than Deuce Vaughn is where I'd plant that one flag to at least set the bar, even though that's not, the biggest esteem necessarily. 3.6 red zone rushes per game, second most in the class, 46% touchdown rate in those. Very good to see him be able to be that good in the red zone. I feel like whenever you see a Blake Corum highlight that pops across my feed, it's usually him punching in one from the red zone inside the 5-yard line. Last year, I thought Corum looked a lot better. Corum, 0.194 EPA per rush, getting 21 rush attempts. Seems like he just got a little bit less effective, getting less volume this year. Kind of the opposite of what we normally see. Really good against 8-man boxes despite being small. Did not get a lot of routes last year, though. That could just be Michigan's offense not giving a lot of pass game opportunities to the running backs. But Blake Corum, 5.4 red zone rushes. Got a nose for the red zone, a nose for the end zone. Like, I think that's for Blake Corum a positive thing. But I think him being 23, him being small, he's got to be at least 200 pounds, I think, to feel confident here. Does weigh in at 213, according to CBS's stuff that I have in the sheet. But Blake Corum, I think, is a name that people will like a lot in college. I think the size is a little bit of an inhibitor for the pros, but good enough where if he landed somewhere and somebody really took that belief on him, but I just don't think he's going to get the highest draft capital being 23. You got the small tank, yeah. And that one makes no sense because he doesn't play like a tank at all. But yeah, I guess that's true. Cody Buckeye Killer Schrader. Yeah, Cody Schrader. in here, but again, just old, an old guy. Ray Davis, another old guy, 0.058 EPA per rush, stuffed at a really high rate, 20% stuffed run rate, not what you want to see. Didn't earn targets very well either. 20% target per out run rate, 22% avoided tackle rate in the pass game as well. You definitely want to see that be higher in the pass game than it is in the run game, just because you have more space to operate in the pass game. So anytime it's worse, it's not a great sign. It does mean you're maybe not getting going fast enough as one thing. Oh, it's an interesting question. Is Blake Corum another CEH? I mean, CEH is bigger. I don't know. I think Blake Corum's got a little more touchdown potential for sure. But definitely, some concerns that he's just rising with the tide of an offense that's scored a lot of touchdowns over the last couple of years that he's been a top back for him. So for Corum, he's small, man. I think the big thing for him is he's got to land somewhere where they really buy in. Let's say the Chargers lose Eckler this year. Harbaugh takes that job. They bring in Corum with one of their draft picks. I think that's one where you're probably okay, Harbaugh's going to give him the best shot he's going to get to actually be a bell cow kind of back. But yeah, Corum is definitely gives me some concern with the size stuff, I think. Ray Davis to close out Ray Davis here. Good against 8-man boxes. Ray Davis seems okay. I don't know that I ever want a 24-year-old back. Feels like those guys maybe don't get drafted, maybe go to the United Football League. But for Ray Davis, I think that the numbers look okay. Nothing stands out, though. Getting stuffed at a high rate, not the most impressive thing. But Ray Davis, certainly a player that's in play, but not the most exciting guy at 24, and just with these numbers being what they are. Trey Benson, another guy from Florida State. Florida State, of course, a good team this year. So for Trey Benson, probably benefiting a little bit. Some of that game scripts they had. Only 14 opportunities per game, so did not earn at a high level. 22% avoided tackle rate, also not the most impressive. Scored a lot of touchdowns, still at only a 0.12 EPA per rush, which is not great when you're scoring the touchdowns, so you're not adding direct value overall. The EPA should inherently be kind of higher. Bold names are names from PFF's top 5. They're not names to look out for. They could be if you really like PFF. So if you're not JJ Watt, then you might want to check out the bold ones, but that's just me keeping a kind of tab on other things that aren't CBS's rankings that are kind of hit and miss. Trey Benson, 6.8 routes per game, so not a good pass game back, or actually he was pretty good in the pass game. It's just they didn't trust him to do it, but did get targeted pretty well. 2 targets per game on the 6.8 routes, which gives him a 29% target per out run rate. So the hope would, I think, be if you're drafting him that he would be a guy that can come in, get more of a pass game role that he had in college. But obviously we need to have him have that pathway and have the draft capital to support him getting that pathway to get that work. Gets 8-man boxes perfectly fine. 6.6 yards per route per rush there. 2.6 yards after contact. So only saw 8-man boxes on 2.7 carries. So a lot less than a Blake Corum. We saw it on 7 carries per game, but still a positive EPA. I think that Trey Benson performed relatively well against 8-man boxes. No issue there. Red zone's fine. 0.22 EPA per red zone rush. 1.7 red zone rushes. So didn't get the volume again. I think the biggest question for Trey Benson is is it a Florida State thing, or is it a him thing that he's not getting that volume? He's not getting that work. For Trey Benson, I think that the numbers look good enough. If the draft capital's there, if the combine number's there, if the RAS, the relative athletic score testing is there, I would say that for Trey Benson, then he looks a little bit more appealing. The numbers, though, not quite Tank Bigsby, but Bigsby adjacent is what I'm feeling from the numbers. It's just nothing here is wowing me, but it's positive everywhere. That's probably not fair because Bigsby was a negative EPA rusher. It's positive everywhere, so he did add value with his touches. I just am not wowed by anything here. He's not shifty. He's not generating a lot of opportunity for himself. But the one thing you can plant a flag for is he earned targets at a pretty high rate. So maybe that ability can really pour it over if he's just getting a lot more attempts in the pass game. Braelon Allen would be a fun Packer replacement for Dylan. I mean, that would be an upgrade, I'm sure. I'd rather see somebody that they can actually have compete with Aaron Jones for both parts of the game, where you can be a good rusher and be a good pass game guy. But honestly, the pass game role for Green Bay is much worse now that Jordan Love's the QB because he's just not checking down like Aaron Rodgers did. Dylan Laube, I presume that's how you pronounce it. I don't know what we're seeing here. He played at New Hampshire, 5'10", 208. So if he's over 200, again, another positive thing. His age, too, I don't think we're going to be able to find Dylan Laube's age because I don't think he's a prospect of enough esteem to have an age out there. It's funny to just pull that up. We have shirtless bros floating around. 23 years old is not great. But these pass game numbers, I mean, he was basically used like a wide receiver in terms of these numbers. But if he was used like a wide receiver, he was the Puka Nacua of running backs as wide receivers because he's got a 41% target per out run rate and a 1.562 EPA per target. So basically, when they're targeting him, he was adding a point and a half, a little bit more than a point and a half every time that he was targeting, that he was getting targeted. And he had 15 targets a game, 12 catches a game. I don't know what to make of these numbers. This doesn't make sense. It seems gimmicky. I don't know about New Hampshire's offense to have any sort of faith there. But Dylan Laube, if he lands in a spot where he gets drafted and they're using him in the preseason, he can see the field as like a third down back just because these are insane numbers, but he played at New Hampshire and he's 23 years old. So like, how much do the numbers matter really when that's the case for you? That's the part that I'm not sold on. But I think for Dylan Laube overall, seeing these kind of numbers is really crazy. And he got something here. I just don't know if he's got something enough that, like you need somebody to take a leap on him. But I will say, like, if he goes somewhere where like Kyron, we talked about a guy that looked really good, in terms of the workload he got in the passing game, but actually was not very efficient. If he went to a place like that, where it's like, okay, we know the Rams are willing to make the most of these low draft capital guys that showed something analytically like a Puka Nacua and like a Kyron Williams, he could be like that pass game back with the Kyron Williams who plays in the third and longs and who plays in those pass game situations and maybe could be used to his optimal conditions. But I think that for Dylan Laube, there's something here. I just don't know if there's enough of something to actually get a chance. Any chance Emmanuel Wilson emerges in the backfield? How old is he? If he's young enough, you could say maybe. We're getting off the beaten path. He's 24 years old, so we're pretty close to him having already hit his peak potentially. It comes from a small school. It's possible, but I don't think that's the highest probability outcome. Jaylen Wright from Tennessee, the yin to Jabari Small's yang. Looks better than Jabari Small. Jaylen Wright, 0.14 EPA per rush, 7.4 yards per rush, only 13.4 opportunities per game. Thus, it did not earn the volume. But yeah, we just saw Jabari Small getting some amount of volume, so obviously makes sense there. Jaylen Wright, not great in the pass game, and negative 0.1 EPA. Do not want to see a negative in the pass game, really, especially like a hard negative, or this one at least within a potential margin of error / like close to zero. This one we're now at negative 0.1, getting further away from there. Jaylen Wright did not run against 8-man boxes at all, or enough to qualify rather. So that's why that's there. Only 1.5 red zone rushes a game. Jaylen Wright, I don't know. High avoided tackle rate at 32%, so he would be right there with a Bijan, with a Roshan in this pass class. But for Jaylen Wright, nothing here really makes me excited about him. If he lands at a good spot, he's fine. If the RAS numbers are good, you bump him up. But I think numerically, nothing here is standing out. Besides the fact that he was a good pure EPA rusher. So maybe the comp here would be kind of Keaton Mitchell-y, but a higher competition. Tennessee, though, again, a video game offense. I think you have to downgrade a little bit for that as well. But Jaylen Wright, I would say I'd have him above Jabari Small. But I don't know how old Jaylen Wright is because I did not look that up. But let's see. 20 years old. All right, yeah. So I like that for Jaylen Wright. 20 years old. The hope would be you have more production from him. If he's in the class, he's a pick to watch. I think that could move up a little bit more because of being young and having some decent production. Jace McClellan from Bama. 0.025 EPA per rush, not great. 28% avoided tackle rate, pretty good. Low stuff for run rate. Again, not a lot of volume. It's really not a lot of guys earn big workloads in this class, which is a little bit odd to see because last year, again, we had like 5 different guys who had 24 or more touches per game. In this class, we have nobody above 24, which maybe speaks to the trends overall, but definitely could also be a reflection on these guys just not being enough earners, that they were not trusted as bell cows at their colleges. But Jace McClellan, looks like a power back mostly. Good against 8-man boxes, really good against 8-man boxes. 31% avoided tackle rate, 6.1 yards per rush against 8-man boxes. In the pass game, added some value, a 0.24 EPA. 20% avoided tackle rate's pretty low, but he's a power back that doesn't seem incredibly shifty. I would say the avoided tackles here we're thinking are a little bit more from guys kind of falling off of them than him being laterally good side to side. McClellan, though, I think he's an okay back. I think there's nothing here that makes me feel really excited about it. Nothing here that scares me off. Maybe some opportunities to be a power back. What is his age? You tell I really only looked at the ages of the guys who had theoretically high draft capital. 21 years old, so young enough to. The guys that are 23, 24, you have to kind of downgrade substantially. 21 years old with these numbers. I think Jace McClellan, fairly interesting. And frankly, to me, as interesting as a Trey Benson. Like, I don't think there's a big drop off between McClellan and Benson in terms of that opportunity because of the age. As interesting in some respects as a Blake Corum. If you want to downgrade Jonathon Brooks for the ACL, maybe that does make him a little bit more interesting as well for Jace McClellan. But I think McClellan, being this young, having good power numbers, not bad numbers in the receiving game, I think there's opportunity for him. MarShawn Lloyd, an older back, but the shiftiest back in the class, 37% avoided tackle rate, which would also be the highest from last year's top backs as well. 8% touchdown rate, 85% missed tackle rate in the pass game, which is crazy, but he only had 1.7 targets per game, so not a lot of work there. Did not face 8-man boxes enough to qualify. 2.4 red zone rushes a game for MarShawn Lloyd. He's older. Again, he's 23 years old, so I think that's a pretty big downgrade for him. But shiftiest back in the class, 5'9", 210, a little bit small, but has the weight if he's going to clock in over 200 pounds. I think MarShawn Lloyd, maybe somebody to watch. Just being that shifty, having enough girth to make it work, I think is okay. But his combined height and weight can be very important to see, because if he's not big enough and he's got these numbers, it probably won't matter. I feel like I described Najee Harris. Yeah, I mean, I guess another back with the same pedigree. Yeah, like if he lands and gets a Najee situation where they just feed him the ball, Jace McClellan could be that guy. Though I would think that Jace McClellan might have a little more juice in the pass game, but maybe not because he didn't really miss tackles there. But yeah, I guess the Najee comp for Jace McClellan is not bad at all. Austin Jones, negative 0.002 EPA per rush. Again, a bad sign there. Only 7.8 opportunities per game, so not get much work. Pretty good in the pass game, though. 0.42 EPA in the pass game, though. He and MarShawn Lloyd, basically the same EPA, so it might be a reflection of the USC's offense and Caleb Williams' ability to get the ball out to the running backs. Yeah, not a lot of routes there either. Was good in the red zone, but only got 1.7 red zone rushes per game. 0.31 EPA on those plays in the red zone. Austin Jones, okay. I think I'd rather have MarShawn Lloyd. Austin Jones, I think, is also an older back. I'm not even going to look it up, but I feel like he's also 23. So Austin Jones, okay, maybe a little bit bigger than Lloyd. Probably prefer Lloyd because we're talking about a 7% avoided tackle rate for Austin Jones compared to 37%. MarShawn Lloyd might have juice like to get on the field. Austin Jones, I don't think has enough juice to get on the field at this point. Dylan McDuffie didn't qualify in anything in terms of the run game or the receiving game. Did qualify against 8-man boxes. That was pretty good. As we saw Mo Ibrahim last year, you got to really hit the right outcome to land on a team and make a roster, even if you are a good power back. So Dylan McDuffie not qualifying in the other things, not getting enough work in college makes it hard to believe he'll get the work in the pros. So Dylan McDuffie, I don't really get why I get why he's here, but it's just nothing. Cody Schrader, people liking him for what he did in college in terms of the big game production. Highest volume overall, 23 opportunities per game, 22.9 of which were turned into touches, 21 of which were rush attempts as well. Cody Schrader, positive EPA rusher, slightly positive EPA as a receiver, 0.19 EPA there. 0.14 EPA against the 8-man box. Cody Schrader's okay. He's just 23, and I kind of think he's like a worse, lower pedigree version of Blake Corum. So I think Cody Schrader in that Blake Corum bucket, but nothing that exciting here. Definitely nothing compared to an Audric Estime. Cameron Skattebo, what the fuck is this guy's name? Skattleboy? Skattebo, that's it. Cam Skattebo. 5'10", 225, so hopefully has enough size. 16.4 opportunities per game, 10.4% stuffed run rate. That's good to see. 0.1 EPA basically per rush attempt, 0.24 EPA per pass attempt. Cam Skattebo, honestly, his numbers don't look bad. Definitely not a high avoided tackle rate guy, which when you're not that in college, I think you don't have enough juice to get into the pros, because a guy like Bijan, again, was a 33% avoided tackle rate guy in college. He comes down to like 20-ish, I believe, this past year in terms of all his opportunities. You want to see these guys be in the 30s because then they can come down to the 20s and still be good. Guys who are then in the 40s and come down to the 30s, they're really great. Guys who are 18 in college and then they come down to 10, you're then talking about you need to be like a bell cow back, because like a 10% avoided tackle rate is Joe Mixon territory, is Saquon Barkley territory. It's guys that have a lot of juice that have a secure role. So for Skattebo, I think that's probably the biggest issue that I would see for him. What's his age? Would be another one. If he's 23, we have to downgrade him quite a bit. Should be an easier way to find these guys' ages, huh? Only been in college 3 years. Also, really, but it's just Not the face pick. That's a punter face pick. That's I wish I didn't see his face. But yeah, Cam Skattebo, 3 years in college, maybe young enough. I'm intrigued by him. I think in terms of the white running back rankings, I'd put him ahead of Will Shipley. But in terms of the overall running back rankings, not doing a lot for me. It is a Hingle McCringleberry kind of name. Let's see. Might not see a running back go before the 3rd round. Also, probably fewer total running backs drafted in this draft. Seems like a down year after Bijan and Gibbs last year. Yeah, I think that's fair. If Estime, I think, can go in the 2nd round. Brooks, if he weren't hurt, could go in the 2nd round. Bucky Irving, I agree, 2nd, 3rd round, because he's probably a little bit too small. But yeah, look, there's going to be value in this class. I think Estime is really going to be the value, but I think there's a couple different guys here that they land in the right spot, they're going to be there. So most of the guys that I've highlighted and said, I have some interest in, I would draft them and sell them out in the big board. But again, you have to keep in mind that these guys have to land the right situation to climb those rankings and then be good enough to do it and also have the testing kind of back out everything too. So there's a lot of hurdles left to go for all these guys. Nakia Watson got worse this year at pretty much everything. Last year, he looked not great. This year, he looks worse. Yeah, negative 0.002 EPA. Was good in the pass game. Last year was Nakia Watson. This year, he wasn't that good in the pass game and got worse in the run game. So Nakia Watson, good size, it looks like, 6 feet, 217. Besides that, opportunities went down, 10.3 opportunities per game. Nothing for Nakia Watson to love besides the fact that he's passable at everything. But I think he's probably going the wrong way and maybe would have been better off in the last class. Amani Bailey here, 21 opportunities per game for him. Negative 0.007 EPA. Don't love to see that, but he did earn volume in TCU's offense. It's kind of the replacement for Kendre Miller. 15.6 routes per game for Amani Bailey. 0.25 EPA there, which is okay, but didn't earn targets at a high rate, which we don't want to see. Didn't do anything against 8-man boxes enough to qualify. 2.7 red zone rushes per game. Didn't convert that at a high touchdown rate. Amani Bailey, I don't know, worst version of Kendre for sure. And Kendre barely got in the field. The size also for Amani, not great at 5'9", and hopefully you'd have him clock over 200 pounds. But yeah, he's somebody who has to have really good athletic testing stuff to get there. I think a lot of these guys, any of them, if they have random athletic testing scores that are going to be high enough, I think, or athletic testing scores, I would say that those guys should immediately take a leap, because besides that, this class is pretty flat. So the athletes at running back got to get drafted higher, because I think that's what's going to make them stand out more, basically. The guys that Justin gave me here, Isaiah Davis did not qualify. Jawar Jordan did not qualify. Rasheen Ali did qualify, 20.8 intended touches per game or opportunities per game. Not good, though. Negative 0.06 EPA per rush, negative 0.2 EPA per target. 3 red zone attempts per game. Yeah, nothing for Rasheen Ali makes me think that he should be on this a little bit more. Let's see. I feel like a lot of the big board opportunities back, since no one knows any of the actual good ones. Look, I can tell you, as somebody who pays half attention to college football and half might be generous because I really only pay attention to USC and big national things. I did not hear people talking about Estime as a guy. I don't want to harp on him because we know how it can go. He looks like somebody that you should go out of your way to get. That's how I feel about Estime. To a lesser extent, Bucky Irving, I feel the same way. But I think that's really it in terms of these guys. Just because there's enough dings where I just don't think Corum gets drafted highly enough because he's too old. Schrader, same thing. And again, I don't think the athletic pedigree for Schrader is going to be that high either. Laube, I don't know what the fuck the deal is, but if he lands in the right spot, somebody might use him really well and make him into a beast, because these numbers just literally just don't make sense how he could do this. Laube had 24.6 yards per catch. How is that possible? I don't know. I have to look up Dylan Laube highlights. I know that. All right, so let's do our takeaways for this one. And of course, if you are a paying customer here, if you hit that join button down below for $4.99 a month, you'll get all this data as well. Both years of 2023 and 2024. We'll drop it in the community tab so you guys can check that out for yourself if you want. My estimates are going to be, it's Audric Estime. This is the guy. This is the one that we've been waiting for here. I don't as long as he's healthy, as long as he gets through the process, as long as he's getting involved in the rankings or whatever, he should be the top back in the class. I know Braelon Allen going to be a little bit younger, whatever, but in terms of a running back with juice, that is Audric Estime. So that's the guy. If you're going to leave this video with one name, that's the one to take with you. Besides that, I think that we need to learn a lot more about all these backs. Nobody really wows you. Bucky Irving, we talked about being okay. Jonathon Brooks, I'm intrigued by the ACL thing. Definitely not a great sign either. Blake Corum, too old. Trey Benson, maybe not good enough. There's a lot of questions here at running back. So landing spot, the RES score is going to be very key parts to watch out for. But yeah, like if there's one guy you're going to draft and really take that shot on, I think it's Estime. And then if Dylan Laube ends up being something in the NFL, like anything, really, if he ends up being even Danny Woodhead, let's look back on this moment and go, what the fuck was this? Like, what was Dylan Laube's numbers? These don't make sense. How did this happen? So I think that's the other thing I'll plant a flag for. But really, the actionable information is like, I would draft Estime in every draft, man, and assume that he's going to land the right spot, because like that's a running back for you. That's a running back you take home to mom. But there we go. So we've now covered, of course, watch the previous videos as well. We've covered the QBs. We've covered the wide receivers. I've landed on some really pronounced takes about the guys that are going to have want to hit the ground on really heavy the second that drafts open up. Of course, next week, going to be tight end. So Brock Bowers, the guy there. I know he looked great in 2023 numbers. Does he look as good in 2024? I guess, or, whatever. When I did it in 2023, is he going to look as good in the light of 2024? We'll find out next week. But Brock Bowers, definitely somebody who we can look forward to enthusiastically. Of course, I appreciate all you guys being here. Please do subscribe if you haven't yet. Hit the like button. Leave a comment. If there's any prospects I missed, any guys you want to push back on, anything that I just didn't get right, feel free to tell me in the comments down below. Always appreciate you guys adding to that process here that I appreciate, and just, get better every day. It's all we can do here. Of course, go check out Probably as well. Have the best bets video up for NBA today. We'll have the divisional round bets coming up on the Probably app YouTube channel too. But you get it for yourself, really. Just all day long, you'd be hitting bets. Had another profitable day in NBA yesterday. I feel like it's impossible to have really big losing days in NBA with the data we have at Probably. But in general, like, just winning data there will help you out, especially if you're trying to build a bankroll to go attack best ball this year. Do it for yourself at probably.com and use that promo code SPLASH to save yourself 50%. Get all of our pregame data for under $10 a month, all of our live in-game data for under $25 a month. People have won. Our guy Jason, OG Mans fan, has paid back a yearly membership 6 times over already, 5-6 times over, maybe even more that I'm not aware of. So that's really like what the math is here. I want you guys to get in there, take advantage of it, and help make yourself more money if you're in a legal betting state, or even if you're not, if you just want to bet on Bovada, the data is still going to be as good. So check it out for yourself at probably.com. Back tomorrow tomorrow will be a 12 o'clock start time, because I'm doing the Stochastic Sims show because they don't have any employees left. So I'm going to get my contractor rate and do a show with Laube tomorrow at 11. But I'll be on here at 12 tomorrow doing the divisional round DFS builds, hand build, projections / ownership projections, optimizer sims. We're doing that tomorrow here at 12 o'clock on the channel. So I will see you guys then. Thank you to the Squirt Squad, of course. Thank you to all the paying members here. Thank you to Tyler giving us 5 new members that I will add to the sheet for tomorrow. But thank you guys for being here, and I'll see you guys again soon. So enjoy your days and whatever you're playing out there. Good luck. Bye.